Welcome to the Apollo Road podcast, Mia.
Thank you very much, Alex.
So, it's just about an 8-hour difference between the United States and Oslo right now. So, thank you for getting up early in the morning to do the podcast. I'm staying up a little bit late, but we finally got it done.
Yeah, it's nothing like a 6 a.m. Sunday morning.
Yeah, it's a little bit, I'd say, more of a sacrifice on your part.
I actually have a new puppy that wakes me up at 5 a.m. every morning, so it's actually not too bad. Getting used to it now.
Little furry alarm clock, huh?
Absolutely, yeah. A very cute one.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing the podcast. We met about a year and a half ago in Albuquerque. Of all places, you were in town, and first off, you're a 3D mixed media artist. Is that how you would categorize your artwork?
Yeah, I would say a visual artist focusing on sculpture, metal.
Yeah, so a lot of physical form sculpture. So why were you in Albuquerque when we met, and how did you come across our studio?
Yeah, and so I did a little bit of research before arriving there. We were there because of a project that my husband is a DP, and he was filming a movie over the winter 2020. And I was looking for a shop to produce some work for an exhibition in Norway. So because of our jobs, we sort of tend to move around quite a bit and sort of need to navigate, the shops wherever I am. And some friends of mine in Australia who had been living in New Mexico for a while, they knew your dad, and they sort of sent me to the shop where I met you and your dad, and sort of during this strange time in Albuquerque and in the world in general. But I didn't really think that we would be able to sort of work together in the way that we ended up doing because of COVID and the shutdown and just like the general paranoia that was going around. But you guys were so welcoming, and we sort of ended up working pretty closely together, masks and no masks, and and yeah.
Yeah, it was such a curveball because, as you know, we have my dad's been building furniture for over 30 years, and he's sort of transitioned to general fabrication and design work in the last 10 years, as art shows in the United States they've changed. He didn't really want to keep doing the road work and the driving to drive out to all the arts festivals, so he transitioned more towards local fabrication. So we get stuff in the door that's different every day, different projects, but you never really expect to have somebody from across the world come in and say, "Hey, I have a project and I need to ship it to Norway." And during that winter was when I think it was like that weird first phase of COVID where we thought it was a 6-month thing, an 8-month thing, and nobody really wanted to believe that it was going to last 2+ years. And so luckily, despite all that, yeah, we found a work situation that it worked for you, it worked for us, and it was fun to get to meet you, and it worked out.
It makes a huge difference if there's a background in art, being able to sort of bounce ideas back and forth, and sort of create some kind of trust. And I felt like we did arrive at that point, both you and I and you and your dad. But you sort of took over eventually. Your dad was
Yeah, it was,
pretty busy at the time, so
yeah, and it was funny because you had spotted, I think when my dad initially kind of quoted your project, he gave you a tour of the shop, and you had noticed I had made a little tiny titanium sculpture, and I was just practicing welding, and welding titanium typically is a really involved process for structural stuff, or a lot of mechanical for like automotive. It's very meticulous, and you have to really use the right shielding gas. And I was just doing it for the technique and learning how to work with the metal, because as most people that listen to the podcast know, I designed a titanium spatula in college. And so I've always just liked working with titanium, and it's in Albuquerque, like it's not really that common. But you had spotted this little titanium sculpture that I had on a shelf somewhere, and you're like, oh, that's,
yeah.
I guess it caught your eye. And so that's, I think, how we ended up mostly doing the collaboration work.
Yeah, I could see that you had skills with that material, and titanium to me was new at the time. You know, I started doing this technique, I think, just before arriving in Albuquerque, being interested in sort of using the torch to draw directly onto metal. And so seeing how that looked on the titanium was really of interest. And then, you know, we sort of did a lot of experimentation with that, especially in terms of heat and you know, the amps that we needed. And I guess we sort of 2 years later now arrived at this, you know, finally getting sort of a better idea of what you need to use, and that to me is a really interesting process, you know. How to move from burning through the metal to actually being able to create something that stays on there and makes patterns and shapes. And
yeah, it was very, like I said, it really kind of took me by surprise, just from the fact that these, you know, artists that are from a different country somehow ended up in your shop, and you're actually finding a lot of common approaches to working with materials. And at that time, I mean, I've bounced around so much in my very short design career. I started off kind of with industrial design in my mind, as that's the career path I wanted to do. Engineering wasn't really for me. I liked more of the art, so I kind of thought industrial design seemed like a good balance. And, you know, to this day, I don't think I could really call myself an artist per se, because mostly what I do is more craft. But it was really, really refreshing to work with you, because you really brought back that, hey, let's try this, and you have patterns and shapes and ideas, and you want them basically transcribed onto metal. And it was just a really fun way to access that artistic side, the pure artistic side that I really haven't followed much. And I'm sure for you it was like you were relieved to find a place that you could actually work with people, and in Albuquerque of all places, which is just such a different, it probably gave you some culture shock, right?
Well, I think what was really cool about that experience too was that, you know, there is a difference, I think, in metal work especially from, I work at a farm right outside of Oslo, and I produce my sculptures there, together with a technician, Robert Taylor. He and I have been working together for 3 or 4 years now, and he is this amazing metal worker technician, and his style is extremely, you know, sort of, it's almost like his finesse is so perfect, and he does everything so, you know, amazingly beautiful and thoroughly, but then again, there was something in the rawness of, especially when I was working, doing the chimneys with your dad, there was this rawness and sort of, it was almost like I was imagining him, working shirtless and just sort of welding shirtless. And there was this like really awesome rawness to it that I think that I appreciated too. Whilst I think you are maybe a little bit more of a finesse guy.
That's, it's funny. It is. My dad, he moves fast. He definitely just, he makes it work, and he'll manhandle things in the shop and just throw them around, and he knows exactly what he wants and gets it done. And
yeah.
He likes doing bigger scale, bigger, like heavier steel, bigger objects, bigger structures. And I'm definitely more on I like it to fit either, if I can hold it or if I can fit it, it's on a small table. That's kind of more of my...
Yeah. So there's a really nice balance there, I think, in your shop, and also just an incredible shop you guys have there. It's pretty unique.
Yeah, thanks. It's, he built that from the ground up pretty much, and it's takes decades. So how long have you always been an artist? How did you get there?
Yeah, pretty much from the day I was born.
And were you born in Oslo?
Yeah.
Are you from Oslo originally?
I was born in Oslo. My family is from both the West Fjords and from the south of Norway. But then we also have a background in Holland and the United States. So my grandfather moved here from the States in the 60s when he met my grandmother, and he was American, Dutch.
Interesting.
Yeah, so my mom has an American passport, and so I have a little bit of a connection to the States through that side of the family as well.
It seems like more often than not, it's always people that move to the United States and end up settling there, but especially in the 60s, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I think it was probably a very strange experience for him too. He was this very typical American guy, cowboy hat and big gold watch, and he sort of moved out to this very small island called Stord, right outside of Bergen on the West Fjords. So I think when he sort of drove up in his Cadillac on that tiny little island in the 60s, it was probably met with some mixed messages.
Yeah, it's gosh, and that's only now, I think, because of what Instagram, like Norway and Scandinavia in general, is so romanticized and sought after as a travel destination. I'm sure back then it was somewhat of a wild west, so to speak.
Yeah, it was pretty much farmland all over Norway for the longest time until the 60s, and when the oil bloom started to happen, and things really started to change here. So it's been a little quite a journey since then until now.
Yeah, but like you said, artist from day one, huh?
I don't know. Are you an artist from the day you're born? It's a question that's been debated a lot, But I think for me, it started actually on the West Fjords with that house that they lived in, because they had this incredibly large library in the basement. Because my grandmother was a big reader, and she would sort of introduce me to a lot of the old literature from Norway, Hamsun and Ibsen and all these books that I really got really interested in reading, and started writing from I was very early on. And the writing sort of developed into more visual images that I started to draw, and then later on photograph a lot. So my background just academically started on the School of Photography here in Oslo, where I did a 2-year program. And then eventually, I sort of started building structures and filming and photography, photograph them instead of just doing photography. And that sort of led me on to more sculptural forms, starting university, just sort of almost just doing that for the next 5 years of my academic life. So that sort of transitioned from literature and into form. Yeah. Have you read any of the old Norwegian literature?
I have not.
I'll send you some stuff.
Send it my way. I would love to read it. I have been to Scandinavia during college for over the summer. I did a brief trip, and I always knew I would kind of like it there. The architecture, the scenery, the landscape, the geography, it always appealed to me.
Yeah, I find that your work really connects with the nature here, and and the architecture especially, the sort of geometrical forms that I see in your work.
And it's so strange. It's that I don't know where that came from. And it's so my dad actually, he went to Italy when he was in right after high school, and that sort of gave him like the modern sense of furniture building. And so it is really strange where you live, your affinity and your design preference doesn't always match where you live or your location. And oftentimes when it doesn't match, that's when you kind of get some success because you're unique and you stand out. And now that you're traveling the world, how do you find that your aesthetic changes after traveling or seeing other places?
I think it has a huge impact on the work. And I mean, we lived in BC for almost 10 years. And then I did my master's in Reykjavik in Iceland. And I think both those places, even though, it's all in the north, in different locations in the north, it's definitely had a huge impact on my work. And I think especially maybe material-wise, that the wood that you would encounter in BC was so different from the wood you would encounter in Norway, and maybe not metal-wise so much, because that's more a little bit fluid at this point. But wood-wise, definitely some changes. It's funny, in Iceland there's not a lot of trees, but the Icelandic birch, for example, is just so unique because of the weather. It sort of changes its form, becoming these really sort of crooked, strange shapes. And so when you cut it, it just still sort of has this really amazing form in itself. So those things, and the cedar in BC, the smell of the aromatic cedar was also very new to me, and I think all these little elements definitely inspired some of my latest work.
I guess to be an artist, and I think you captured it by saying that you really started out writing first. And that's interesting because I think writing is really how you think. And once you get it on paper, it sort of takes on a life of its own. And then, like you said, it transitioned from the idea to the image, and then the image to the photo, and the photo, eventually you wanted to not just capture a photo, but create the thing that you're looking at. And then now that I can hear the observations of like smell and material, and that's like such a physical way to describe things. And I think to be a good artist like yourself, combining all of the senses and writing, reading, seeing, it really is just so much of a combination. do you find yourself thinking in images more or thinking in ideas more? Because I know some people, it's more literature, more visceral, like photo based, and how they work.
Yeah, I think materials just have such a sensatory aura to them, and even just arriving at a metal shop, you sort of have this feeling, because your sensatory experiences are both something that relates to memory, but it also relates to this place of almost comfort in the end, because I think for me, when I started working in the metal shop at Emily Carr University in Vancouver, which is where I studied my undergrad, that's where I really, those first little piles of metal melting, that was sort of when I really felt like this was something that I wanted to do for a while, And the smell of that melting, and the smell of the heat, and the feeling of the heat, and the oxygen, and all these elements that really brought it to this different it was a different experience for sure.
That's something I noticed too, is the smell.
Yeah.
I like learning how to weld. I've always been in the shop, and I've always known what welding smells like, but once you learn how to weld, and then you weld different materials, and there's at different points it smells different. Yeah. And then when you're grinding your tungsten, even that has a smell, just from the grinding wheel, or it's like weird how all those things mesh in your head and they just swirl around, and it's probably not good for you, for your brain. I know that, but
most metal workers would disagree.
Well, of course they would. Of course they would. I won't decide until later, but yeah, that's the side of creating artwork that once you get through that wall and you kind of experience it from the other side, I think it really just takes on a whole other meaning for you and for your work, and eventually how people perceive your work.
Yeah. Would you say, I was discussing this the other day, but and I think it's, of course, welding is such a big part of doing metal work, but really it's not. It's kind of like the easiest part of creating metal work.
Yeah, I agree. Lining things up and clamping them and fixturing them is 80% of the work. Right.
Yeah, and that's
cutting
kind
it
of
accurately,
a funny thing, because it seems like people are sort of mostly interested in the welding and thinking that metal is or welding is a very sort of complicated part of the process, but really it's sort of just like fusing something together that takes a lot of preparation and measuring and all of that. I was never a very good math student, so that's it's a good thing that sort of keeps my brain going a little bit.
Yeah, you nailed it earlier when you said finesse. And I see a lot of finesse in your work, and I'm going to post your website obviously in the podcast notes so people can follow, but I had pulled up earlier your couple of the gallery showings that you had done. And just because I hadn't gone back and watched and looked at the ISCA gallery. I hadn't looked at that page in a little while, but going back to it and just looking at everything, next to each other on the website, I do just see a lot of the finesse of, there's just like a rhythm to each group of pieces. And as an artist, I think that's hard to do with each show, each body of work. You've done a good job of carrying that through with all of your installations and all of your exhibitions. Is that something you consciously plan for, or is that's just the way of the artist?
Well, I think it's I think actually from the sort of New Mexico stay and up until today, my work has taken a little bit of a different turn, especially because I've started working more with more precious metals, or like brass and titanium and copper, and that has had, it sort of took it in a little bit of a different direction. I haven't shown you the last piece that I sort of almost finished yesterday, but I was like really surprised myself with that one, because and sort of went to this very different place than earlier, maybe moving a little bit away from the industrial and sort of into this other place. So, but there has become a finesse to it. Maybe also partly because I have been working a lot with you, and also with Robert, Robert Taylor here, and he just has this really, there's a sensitivity there that I think I'm also adapting, because you always adapt with the people you work with, and for me, the technicians that I work with are extremely important to me, and I really value that relationship. But copper and even aluminum, which is such a all-around material, can also enter a more precious state. It's soft, and it has a very silvery tone to it, depending on how much you work with it. And it was this time, because we were using an old machine that I've used before to rolling pipes, or rolling big rods. What is that machine called in English? It's like it's
we just call it the roller.
Yeah, the roller. Let's go for it.
There's like various rolling machines. I'm sure there's specific ones.
It's electric, but it feels manual in a way, because you really have to just keep an eye on it, and sort of hold the pipe or the rod to make it sturdy. And so what happened with this latest sculpture was that, because of the material, it went through the roller. And instead of forming a spiral that I was initially thinking that it would do, it sort of created this very different shape as a base. And if it had been, stainless steel or the steel, it would have completely been something else. So that, to me, I think it's always really, really fun when the material sort of takes over the process, and you sort of go with the flow a little bit. And in this case, we were like, okay, do we stop and change the material, or do we stop and sort of try to up the size of the roller wheels? But instead, we sort of just pushed it through, and then in the end, it created this own shape. So that's a fun thought for me, that the material takes over.
Yeah, it's got a mind of its own almost.
Yeah.
Now, here's the question: did you take a picture of the adjustments on the roller wheels, so that if you ever had to make another one, you could replicate it?
I think I would remember, because it was. I remember the size of the rod, but yeah, that's a good point, Alex.
It's we have that problem. It seems like because my dad has so many furniture designs that we don't really. It could be years in between making a design, and each design has a specific bend angles and roll and curvature angles, and that's happened this week where we couldn't remember if we had changed it or what this, and we just had to refigure it out.
Maybe it's nature's way of blocking the sort of what can I say, mass production part of it.
It sure felt like
only unique furniture pieces come out of the shop.
Yeah, more and more I start to wonder, what's, in this world, in this modern world with so much technology and advanced machinery and tools, are you supposed to just go to IKEA for your furniture and accept that it's going to be, exactly the same each time, and spend more of your energy elsewhere in other creative ways? Or, like you said, is it, well, I mean, I'm just wondering, like, what do you think about the perfection of most objects these days and how they're made? And then as an artist, what is your role in adding more spontaneous, organic objects into the world? Because with craft, it's like it has to be useful and it has to look good. Like furniture is like the ultimate. It has to be useful first, and then it has to look good. But ultimately, like the chair has to be level and it has to not wobble. That's like primary. Looks are secondary, but I think in art, it's all about how it looks, right?
Yeah, and you can maybe talk about replicas and these models or drawings that are made to create sculpture. Maybe an idea is to just put all those drawings and sort of hide them in a safe somewhere in Jan Mayen or something, so they can never be found. But talk about this unique sort of shapes or artworks, that are out there in the world that so many people try to replica, Monet and people making big careers out of making work that has already been made, and there's a really interesting dialogue about that. But I think is an IKEA piece from 50 years ago, is it more valuable than a modern one? It's they're sold for a lot of money now,
Yeah, the collector's items.
Personally, I don't go to IKEA. I don't find it very appealing. It makes me really sad to go there, and it's like this. I feel like a mouse inside of a labyrinth.
See, Americans eat that up. We love IKEA.
I know.
It's the best thing ever. It's like an amusement park.
I can appreciate the meatballs, but that's about it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Cinnamon rolls, meatballs, the coffee. The coffee is actually not bad.
Really?
Not bad. I look at it from like the supply chain of like, okay, I don't know where this coffee came from or how long it had to go from, the supply chains around the world, but
probably not fair.
Surely it can't be. But I was surprised. Yeah.
So it's better than the Tim Hortons.
I have never been to a Tim Hortons.
I guess that's a very Canadian thing.
Not yet. I've come close because we did a road trip a couple of years ago, and we were like New York area. We were gonna go up, but and I know there's some that are really close up there. So
it's funny with coffee because so I love airplane coffee. When I have a coffee at the airplane, and I know it's like the lowest of the lowest coffees, but it just tastes so good, and sometimes that Tim Horton coffee or IKEA coffee can also be amazing. So, not to say that that's the same as an artwork, but I think you can appreciate things and forms even though it's not necessarily the only thing that I have a problem with, I think, and the only thing that for me has always been important is the quality of materials, and that is something that I really value, when there is time and effort put behind something, and when there is a sensitivity to the selection of materials that have been used as well, and sort of how they're combined and how they're put together, and if it's just sort of jammed together without any sensitivity, then that also reflects on the piece, I think.
Yeah, it's like handled with care. In a way, hopefully it will hold together across time if it was put together with attention and care.
And you can look at some of the minimalist work, Carl Andre, and look at just a piece of copper on the floor, really, and but still it's just handled with a sensitivity that's very present. So
yeah, and speaking of high art and craft and care, we got to talk about Tim Wendelboe's.
well, that's like a whole other level.
It's so it's funny that I knew who Tim Wendelboe was. You love going there. You sent me a little gift package from their coffee shop. So for people that don't know, who is Tim Wendelboe?
Well, I think you have actually a better overview of that than I do, surprisingly. But
I will take that as a compliment.
I do live very close to Tim Wendelboe, and it's danger because it's like $5 coffee, just black. And they don't use any. They refuse to use any kind of like oat milk, or it's just kind of, you can get a little bit of whole milk in there if you want, but that's about it. And so they're extremely, cautious about what they do, and it is pretty impressive what they've done. So.
And you've seen him.
Yeah, right? In the beginning he was there,
out and about.
In the beginning when they started up, they were there. He was there, but I don't think he's there anymore now.
Yeah, so I found out about him because I got into coffee when I was in college. I just loved you could get scientific about it. You could get a gram scale and weigh out all your beans and try and grind it as well as you could, and weigh the water and take the temperature of the water and try and make a perfect cup of coffee. And it's I've gone through all the methods of coffee except for siphon. That one's someday. But I ended up getting a automatic brewer for the shop, and Tim Wendelboe was one of the lead designers on it.
I think I saw that in your studio.
So on the box, it says, the Wilfa brewer. They don't make that model anymore. They have a newer one. But it's a very attractive design. The coffee is as good as you can get for an automatic drip brewer. But I have to say, like, it's, as a designer, seeing that thing there in the studio, it just feels like your brain feels good just looking at it. Even if you're not making coffee with it, it just looks good. And there's some weird things when you're an artist and you can't really explain why you like the things you like, or why some things you feel an affinity for. If you could talk about, because you're definitely an artist, like you said, from day one. How do you keep that affinity going through school? And because I think, as an artist going to art school and studying rigorously, which I never did, they're giving you structure, and I'm curious how that affects your natural affinity to design and aesthetics.
Yeah, so Emily Carr University is a highly, or used to be a highly conceptual school where there was more focus on sort of learning how to think than how to actually make the work. And because it is also a school that combines, design, industrial design, animation, film, photography, visual art, sculpture, we had the ability to sort of cross paths with all kinds of different fields, which was really great. And I think also, even though it was a conceptual school, I think there was definitely possibilities to develop your skills within the technical field. The metal shop run by Ian Rhodes, an amazing metal worker. He brought something to that metal shop that made you really want to stay in there and practice. But that being said, I did come out of that experience, and also with the masters at the Iceland Academy of the Arts, and the masters, of course, is pretty heavily academic, and you do spend a lot of time reading. And so coming out of school, that's when I really sort of started getting into the more technical aspects of the practice, and maybe also got a little bit of a shock, about that part of the practice. But there is a nice balance to those things, and to be able to also spend time doing research behind what you're actually doing, and it bounces back and forth a lot,
Did they ever, I guess, how much of your work was solo versus in groups?
Yeah.
And how does that affect, because you're as an artist, you always want to lay claim to, like, this is my design, this is my idea. And collaboratively, it's a great way to work, but it's hit or miss.
Yeah,
right?
and so I think that's where the technician come in, and how you connect with the different technicians. You can be very fortunate and and have this really great connection. Like I felt like we've sort of started to develop this really great relationship, where you almost read each other's minds a little bit, and you sort of know the person's taste, and you have this mutual respect for each other. And I think, for me, there's still a lot of times where I don't understand the limitations of the material, because I come to the table with ideas that might not always be possible, and as a technician, you have that knowledge, and you can say, no, Mia, this is actually not possible, but at the same time, there might be some ideas there that are, also new for you, and so together we sort of manage to push together ideas and limitations of material to create new ideas.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt after the brass, because brass, I knew about the material. I knew somewhat of the how it's typically brazed and welded, and you said, hey, let's try this, and I was like, yeah, this doesn't seem like it's really working. And then you said, no, just try it again, but turn up more heat or something. And then we ended up with this amazing result. And on the opposite side of the workpiece, that, yeah, I would have never tried it, because I would have said, yeah, brass, you can't really TIG weld brass. It's typically brazed, and I would have never ventured into it for the sake of exploring it. But your project showed me, hey, there's these really interesting effects when you apply different, unconventional or improper.
And I know that I've probably given both you
techniques.
and Robert a lot of sleepless nights because of that.
Well, and it's funny. Yes, I lose sleep over other people's projects and their work. I never lose sleep over my own because I'm like, if I mess up my own thing, like I can always make another one. But when it's somebody else's, that's when like I do feel the pressure because I just you don't want to mess up somebody else's creation, right? You feel like you're the obstacle, not your design or your ambition, right? It's like I don't want to be the one that get in the way of that.
So far, so good,
So
Alex.
yes, I lost a little bit of sleep, but it was worth it.
Yeah, but yeah, plus
Plus shipping,
that's
international
stressful too.
shipping.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a new experience for me with customs forms. If you've ever filled out a customs form for shipping something to somebody in another country, it's, that's, yeah. You gotta make sure you follow everything, cross your T's,
Yeah,
dot your I's.
it's even worse
And
traveling,
luckily it worked out.
hand luggage with metal. That's always an interesting process too. Yeah, traveling with an Oscar statue or something, then you'll get in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, that's because you never know when your luggage won't show up at the
No.
same time, and it's impressive too that you make it work despite all the travel you've done. You make it work, you make deadlines work, you have shows, you kind of will tailor your process and your designs given the situation, whether it's our trip got delayed, we have to reroute. And it seems like you've done a really good job of being sort of a global artist and not just accustomed to your studio space. And I think that's a really unique, I've never really actually met another artist that works like in the way that you do from so many places.
Yeah,
That's really
I think
cool.
we're lucky, to when you start to create some kind of network of people, and you're always lucky enough to have friends or acquaintances that help you, find the things that might help you produce, which it was also the case with you guys, without my friends that suggested you guys, I would have never found you probably. So yeah.
That's true. We were like, I don't know how anybody finds us for what you were looking for. It was so, if you typed in steel gate Albuquerque, you might have found
really
us. But
also
custom titanium artwork.
it was such a fun experience also walking to you guys' shop, because I had to really walk on the highway and trucks stopping and cars stopping all the time. You need a ride, you need a ride, you need a ride. It's like very much not normal to be walking around, but I'm such a big walker, from here and every time we're in LA too, it's like they're always very shocked. What are you doing out here alone? Why are you walking alone on the highway? And
Yeah, it's different from. I mean, you said your studio is mostly near like farmland or on a farm, and out there it's like you walk because it's beautiful outside and there's things to look at and you get inspiration. And in certain parts of the States, it's like you're either driving directly to where you want to go and you don't, spend any time on the way and it's like that here in Albuquerque too, where I go out to the mountains. I have to get out of the city.
That was one of my
feel like you can
favorite parts of staying in New Mexico, being able to do those hikes around in the beautiful nature. And Santa Fe, of course, is such an amazing place. And I don't know if this is a correct observation from my part, but I think also the politics of that place is extremely progressive and forward thinking, and I really felt like it was at a point in time too, where you really saw that people were incredibly mindful and respectful of each other.
Yeah, it is a very. It's hard for me to step outside of this landscape and kind of see it from afar, just because I grew up here. As much as probably the same as like if I were to try to know what it's like to grow up in Scandinavia, it's probably you know what everybody else thinks about the place, but until you're actually there, then you get to really feel like, oh, it's what I thought, and it's more than I thought, and yeah, it's travel is important.
Well, you go back and forth to Colorado quite a lot, so that must be a nice sort of
Yeah,
combination of places for you, because it's way more forest
yeah,
out
and
there,
it's
isn't it?
pretty much there's a lot of similarity, but yeah, it's easy, it's closer. The trees are closer to you than than here. Yeah, but I still want to go back to Oslo. I still want to go back to Bergen. It's, some of the best seafood I've ever had anywhere is Bergen. Went to the fish market. We were only there for one full day and one night, but went to a fish market, got fresh. I think we got a
Nice.
little bit of
Yeah, the fish
everything.
market there is incredible.
Got some monkfish, and yeah, I was blown away by just how different it is, and how almost just felt like a fairy tale
Well, there
almost.
are a lot of fairy tales
Especially
from
with
here.
the I think the best ones do, right?
Have you read any of the old fairy tale collections from Norway?
So like
I'll also send you some of that.
which ones?
It's
Yeah, which
a
ones are
lot of
specific?
the mythological creatures, like the Holder. Have you heard of her? She's
No.
a female creature that walks around in the woods, and she has a tail, and she will sort of lure men into the woods, and then they never return.
This sounds like it could go one of two ways.
But they're
Yeah, I would love to read more about this magical
I will send
creature.
you some books. But yeah, there's
Thanks.
something creature-like about this latest piece that I just finished too. And in the fall I have a new exhibition at ISCA Gallery, which is the gallery that I work with here, run by Leticia Corinne. So maybe we'll collaborate on that one too, Alex. Who knows?
Fall is not too far away, so that's on your horizon. You plan on doing shows and gallery exhibitions for the near future, for the next couple of years, or
That's
do you have a long-term plan, or just take it year by year?
that's the plan for now. Yeah, just keep showing at galleries. Eventually also want to work on some more public pieces. But I really enjoy making work that is for the indoors. And I have, a lot of people are sort of pushing for me to make work that will be more suitable for the outside. But I really enjoy working with the indoor space, and I think more people should have sculptures inside their homes.
I agree. Yeah, like I said, that right now that coffee maker designed by Tim is that's a sculpture.
It is. Yeah.
This has actually been long overdue. I think we were going to try to do a podcast while you were in the studio almost a year and a half ago, but things changed, travel, COVID, we didn't know, and we did it remote this time, but we will have to connect again, whether it's here or over in your neck of the woods on your side of the pond.
Absolutely. I hope to be able to come back to Albuquerque sooner than later.
Yeah, well, the door's always open.
Thank you.
Let's stay in touch. I'd love to ask you more about your life as a modern practicing artist because there's obviously too much to go into in one short podcast. But you have such a unique style and way of working and influence from different locations that I think you have a long, interesting career ahead of yourself.
Oh, oh, that's very sweet of you, Alex. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mia. We'll end it here, and of course, we'll probably do another podcast at some point. But yeah, thank you for getting up early on. And
Yeah.
actually, it is officially Mother's Day in the United States, so happy Mother's Day.
Oh, great. Oh, thank you very much, and thanks for staying up late too.
Of course, anytime.